Hi everyone, this is Constellations here. So we finally have the Yae Widsith Math Guide ready. This is Math Guide 3. Basically, I'm gonna go into detail about Widsith. We'll look at the 3 different rotations that we have done for Kagura's Verity, the Q focus rotation, the E focus rotation, as well as the EC-com rotation. And I'll do a weapon comparison with between Widsith and Kagura's Verity as well in the second half of this video. So first half, I'm just gonna quickly talk about Widsith effect. Basically, there's 3 random tin zones that we can get from Widsith. You get 60% increased attack, you get 48% elemental damage bonus, or 240 EM. It's random which you get, and it gets doubled at R5. Okay, pretty straightforward stuff. I don't want to go too much into detail in all these things. I want to go into detail in the math portion, so bear with me if I skip some stuff or I go real fast, yeah? Okay, yeah, we have a lot of figures involved here, but basically, I'm gonna do a recap on rotations. We'll talk about whether Widsith is really good or is it simply overhyped right now. And then we look at the artifact comparison for EC-com damage, Q focus rotation, E focus rotation. Following that, I will do weapon comparison as well, in the usual weapon comparison format that I've always been doing since I don't know which character, Yomiya? Or maybe earlier. Alright, so let's look at rotations. Electro hyper carry Q focus, no change. Just a quick recap of the rotations in this video so that you don't need to refer to the previous video. You can just look at all these videos. Oh, sorry. You can just look at the rotation here in this video. Alright, no change. I'm not gonna go through them in detail. Now let's talk about the real gist of this video. Is Widsith really good or just simply overhyped? I understand a lot of people are saying that Widsith is very good, on par, or even just slightly behind Kagura's Verity. But is that really the case? Let's take a look at surface level look first. Okay, Kagura's Verity at R1, 608 base attack, crit damage 68.2 regardless of R1, R5. Widsith has lower base attack, 510, crit damage 55.1. But a real big difference here is in the weapon effect bonus, where Kagura's Verity gets only 36% elemental skill bonus and 12% elemental damage at R1. Whereas R5 Widsith, the best scenario you can get is the 96% elemental damage. Let's say you manage to be lucky and you get that, it really looks a huge difference, right? Because if you look just at the stats and bonuses here, even if Widsith has 11.1 CD lower and 98 base attack lower as well, the weapon effect looks like it will surpass Kagura's Verity. Not to mention the 96% ally damage bonus on R5 Widsith applies to both burst and elemental skill, while Kagura's only gives 48% to her elemental skill and 12% to her burst. So, this is a terrible 5-star weapon, right? Do you guys think so? Wrong. Okay? That's wrong. Why? Always remember this, MiHoYo knows how to optimize their sales, especially for new characters. I'll give you guys 3 key reasons why Widsith is not as good as you may think. So A, Widsith has a 10-second buff uptime with a 30-second cooldown, while Kagura's Verity lasts for 16 seconds with no cooldown. E-turrets last for 14 seconds. So the buff basically, you can make it last all the way. Okay, it's 100% uptime on Kagura's Verity. 100% uptime. Widsith is only 33% uptime, because Yae's E does not snapshot. Very important, her E does not snapshot. So you can't just switch to her on-field, cast your stuff, and expect that the Widsith buff will last throughout her E, because they don't snapshot. And Yae is continuously doing on-field damage beyond 10 seconds. That's for sure, because she's a sub DPS, you cast and use her stuff, you switch to your on-field DPS to do their on-field work. But by then, your Widsith buff will have been over. Your Yae is doing damage without this 96% elemental damage bonus. Okay, without. In fact, you have a 20-second downtime because it's a 30-second cooldown, right? So 33% uptime only. It's very, very painful if you ask me. I'll show you guys in the math later. So Widsith's 30-second cooldown is also beyond her burst cooldown of 22 seconds. Right, because the burst is on 22-second cooldown with 90 energy. Ideally, you should aim to use her burst at 100% uptime, which means you use her burst every 22 seconds. So if that's the case, Widsith is only going to buff her burst once every 2 bursts. That's bad. Now, in my rotation, I actually have a way to overcome this at least for the first 2 rotations. I'll talk about that in the later session of this video as well. But it doesn't change the fact that there will be some scenarios where your Widsith cooldown is not ready, but your burst is ready. That is an issue. Oh, and before you suggest to extend it to 30 seconds, don't worry, I will address it shortly after this. And the other thing is that 96% elemental damage bonus is not guaranteed. If you get 480 EM or 120% attack instead, Widsith will perform worse. Okay, Widsith will perform worse if you get EM or attack instead of elemental damage bonus. Ele damage is the best bonus to get from Widsith. So let's talk about alternative solutions to optimize Widsith. Extending your rotation to 30 seconds to match Widsith buff so that you can buff your burst every 30 seconds. It's a really, really bad idea. Extending your rotation regardless of what comp is always a bad idea. Because if you're in a long fight, just think of it this way, okay? 3 rotations of 30 seconds is 2 seconds more or equal, depends on how you want to be exact about it. 4 rotations of 22 seconds. In the time, because you extend your rotation, 3 of it is equivalent to 4 rotations, which means you are missing out on an entire rotation. Even if you miss out on Widsith buff, I can assure you that an entire rotation will still do more damage, even if it's unbuffed by Widsith, because it's entire rotation. So honestly, extending rotation is always a bad thing. Okay, it's always a bad thing. No doubts about it. Now, you might argue that 10-second uptime doesn't matter if you kill everything in 10 seconds with Widsith. This doesn't change the fact that you have 20 seconds downtime, right? Because for the next 20 seconds, you're not getting your Widsith buff unless you're not using your Yae, unless you're not even putting her E for off-field. Not gonna happen, so this is not a good point. And in the first place, if you're willing to spend on Yae to make her kill stuff in 10 seconds along with your other fully built characters in the team, why would you not spend to get R1's Kaguras? Especially if the current rumors are true and Jake Carter is the other 5-star weapon in the banner, right? I see no reason why not to pull if you're already willing to spend to get her to be able to kill stuff in 10 seconds. Okay? Now there are some people who I understand the rationale. You want to put Yae Miko as the first character, so you delay your buff until you first cast your other character stuff. And then, I made a typo here. You cast your Q directly into 3xe, right? Because you put her as the first character, you put your first 3 E's first. Honestly, this does not help much, other than getting 2 to 3 more hits on her E, which translates to additional approximately 400 damage per second. You tell me, do you think additional 400 damage per second is significant enough in a 30-second duration? Additional 400 damage per second. Not to mention, in return, you get a lot more restrictions, since not every scenario can have her as the first character. At the start of every challenge, every domain, it's fine. But as you move and rotate through, you always have to remember about your character, the order you switch her in, etc. And it also messes up the rotations that I've shared. And don't forget that I already mentioned that my rotation actually allow you to use her burst twice with Widsith buff. And my rotation will not be using her as the first character for getting 2 to 3 more hits. I'll rather have her burst get the Q buff along with the next round of 3xe. Okay, so I don't recommend doing this. It looks good at first glance, but it screws up your rotation such that you can't get Widsith buff on second burst and E. Okay. Now, so TLDR, Widsith is only good on a very superficial surface level look. If you take into consideration the 30-second cooldown and no guarantee on 96% early damage bonus, Widsith is really not that great in comparison to Kagura's Verity. Now let's look at the math to see what's the difference. First we look at artifact comparison, weapon comparison, and I'm going to be looking at 30 seconds duration figures for accurate representation here. Okay. I'm going to go a little faster for the artifact comparison because I think the weapon comparison is what people will be interested in. But nevertheless, for completeness, we will include this. Yeah, it's a lot of figures. Okay, no worries. I'll show you guys the figures if you really want to. Just a quick one, yeah? 2 Wanderers, 2 Glad Shime. I don't think I need to show it for the rest of the video because I think we've already established that it is a bad idea. In all my previous in the previous Yae Math artifact guide, I think it's very clear. So we're now going to talk about 2 WT, 2 Glads, 2 Shime. So it's going to be 2 Thunder Fury, 2 Glads, 2 Shime, 4 Emblem versus 4 Thunder Silver. So like the previous artifact guide, math guide, same format, and in fact you'll see this time there are no scenarios where Thunder Silver is bad, or rather there are no scenarios where the other 2 artifacts are better than Thunder Silver. But this is the easy comp. We are doing the easy comp first. Okay. So 4-piece Thunder Silver, clear winner. At that sense, 4-piece Emblem is worse than 4-piece Thunder Silver by 3 to 4.4%. So we are talking about this range here. And that's at R1. R5 would be 5.9 to 7%, so it's about 6 to 7%. At C6, interestingly enough, the 2 Glad 2 Shime 2 Glad / Shime with 2 TF is slightly better than 4 Emblem for R5 Widsith, but it's not too big of a difference. We are talking about 0.4% difference. And that 0.4% is against 4 Thunder Silver. If you compare the 2 of them directly, it will be even smaller. So yeah. Now, reminder that I have not included EC reaction damage here because like I said in the previous video, EC Pro is very unreliable. If you really want to check out the Kokomi EC test that I have done previously, you'll see there's no way to really accurately ensure that your specific character is any specific character, whether they are the ones doing the EC prop. So even if I were to include it, I'll be assuming 25% of the EC done by each character in party. So whatever high EM bonus you have, it's going to be further divided. And these things are all standard. For 4-piece Thunder Silver, you assume that all these conditions are met. Straightforward stuff. I've already covered it in the artifact guide, so I'm not going to touch it here. You can read it here as well. Pause it and read it if you want to. Now let's look at the Q focus rotation and E focus rotation in the Electro Hyper Carry comp. So these are the figures. Let me just move them slowly. So you got the 4 Emblem, 4 Thunder Silver again. Ignore the 2 Wanderer troops, yeah. Now let's look at the percentages. So 4 Thunder Silver, clear winner again. Although there are some scenarios where it's very close. Yeah, only 0.3% better than a 4-piece Emblem with EM. But in the first place, like I said, we have already covered this comparison previously in my previous math guides. You should use attack sense where possible. EM sense should not be considered. EM for Yae Miko is a good to have stat. It's not something that you build towards, as of now anyway. Okay, so standard stuff. 4 Thunder Silver, meaning EasyCom is still the winner here, even compared against Q Focus Rotation in Electro Hyper Carrycom. Within the Q Focus Rotation, Fire Emblem is the best. It's about 4% better than 2 Glass slash Shime with 2 TF. At R1, 3% R5, while 2 Wanderers, 2 TF was should not have any doubt on that. But like I said, we have not included reaction damage, but Yae will not always be the one triggering the reaction. If you guys can find a way to reliably do it, let me know. I tried my best with Kokomi previously. We can increase the occurrence rate, but it's not 100%. It's not even majority for that matter. Yeah, it's not even majority. Okay, depends on how you define a majority, but it's still not good enough to justify EM. Same thing, E-Focus Rotation. So bear in mind, when I say E-Focus Rotation, it doesn't mean that you don't use your burst. It just means that you don't use balance buff or your burst. You still are using your burst, you're just not using balance buff, because you're trying to maximize the amount of buff time for your E-Focus Rotation, for your E's, okay, for your E damage. So same thing, these are the figures. Pause if you want to, take a deeper look. Percentages are here. So EM sense again have a better performance against 4 Thunder Silver. But in the first place, you should not be using EM sense or either your 4 Thunder Silver or your 4 Emblem. Okay. So this is what I just covered, not gonna repeat it. And it's pretty much the same. It's also 4%, 3% for 4 Emblem being better than 2 Glass slash Shime. So everything else is the same. So this is very, very straightforward. This has been the artifact comparison. Alright. And more important thing is just the analysis here that we have talked about, whether Widsith is really good or simply overhyped. I've already established here that I think that it's overhyped. It's not as great as what everyone thinks. Now let's look at the actual weapon comparison. So you have Kagura's Verity here. This is the DPS, the damage per second, after we average it out. This is Widsith with elemental damage bonus. Oh, FYI, whatever I'm showing you guys here is just based on the elemental damage first. I did do the EM and attack, but I don't think there's a need for me to go into the same level of detail for them in terms of the artifact comparison. But I have included them for weapon comparison. Okay, so you have elemental damage bonus, you have the EM, and you have the attack percentage. And you have an average figure here. I simply took these 3 figures, added them together and divided by them by 3. As simple as that. And these are the percentage differences. You'll notice that it says Kagura R1 versus. So this figure means Kagura R1 versus Widsith. Kagura R1 is 25.7% better. And likewise for here, we have R5 here with Kagura R1. So what this means is that Kagura R1 is 11% better than R5 Widsith at this particular permutation, which is this talent levels and C0. Okay, this is how you read this table. It's the exact same format as what I've been doing all along for, I don't know, at least 7-8 months. Yeah. So same thing, we have a comparison for Kagura R1 versus Widsith with the EM buff, with the attack percentage buff, and the average buff. Okay. Now, before we start, I'll go through some quick assumptions so that you can understand how these figures are more or less understand how these figures are derived. We'll talk about Kagura's Verity versus Widsith, the findings and conclusion, and the TLDR for this entire video per se. Now bear in mind that I'm only using 4 piece Thunders over here, because I can't afford to throw in all the other artifacts as well. Yoimiya's BGM. Okay, attack sense is assumed here for C1+, CS0 we are assuming ER sense. So in here, I am taking a rather conservative approach where we assume that a high amount of ER is required for Yae. And that's the reason why without C1, we are using ER sense. Obviously, if we don't need that high of an energy, C0 can perform better in comparison to what I have in my math now. But it also means that my C1 can also improve. C1 plus can all improve as well, because everyone's ER requirement is lowered. Okay? The only difference is whether you need an ER sense. Okay? Now, Widsith figures are based on 30-second duration for accurate representation. If I do a math based on 10-second duration, what's the point? I can just go do a showcase after all the math, after Yae is released, and I'll show you guys, oh, Widsith is so good, it does so much damage. But that's only because of the 10 seconds buff duration. The 10 seconds buff that you have. You don't even look at the 20 seconds of not having any buffs. So for simplicity's sake, we will take the artifact set with highest damage for Yae, which is 4TS in easy comp, like what I just mentioned earlier. R5 or 4-star weapons will always be compared to R1 or 5-star weapons. Kinda makes more sense that way, right? Although if you are unlucky, or you have a new player, it actually costs you more to get R5 of a specific weapon than R1. It may cost you more, sorry, I should say it may cost you more. Depends, it varies based on luck. Alright, so these are the assumptions, and you guys know what is going on. I think I will stay at this screen for long enough, you guys can compare accordingly, yeah? Even the C0, C6. So let's talk about Kagura's Verity versus Widsith. So we see that Kagura's Verity has a bigger advantage over Widsith than expected once the full 30 seconds is considered. Because initially when we did that first analysis, we look at Widsith, it even looks like Widsith was going to do more damage than Kagura's, right? But Widsith, with elemental damage buff, is actually lower by 25 to 26% at R1 versus R1, and 11 to 14%, here, this portion, 11 to 14% at R5 versus R1, which means Widsith, R5 Widsith is 11 to 14% lower than R1 Kagura's. This is what this table is trying to say. And then you have EM buff, where the low is lower by even more, 32 to 35% for R1 versus R1, 25 to 28 for R5 versus R1. And then you have attack percent buff, and these are the figures. You have the average buff, which is 30 to 31% at R1 versus R1 and 16 to 19% at R5 versus R1. So this is the figure that I'm going to be used to do my analysis, which is the 16 to 19%, because that's average. It averages out. So Widsith is not as good as initially thought, but just because it's overhyped doesn't mean it's not good. Because an average difference of 16 to 19% from C0 to C6, okay, what I'm trying to say here is that at C0 the difference is 16%, at C6 is 19%. It still makes it a very good 4-star option if you think about it. A 4-star weapon being 16 to 19% away from a signature 5-star weapon is a good 4-star weapon. Because at C6, 19% is like a tier difference. Typically, the difference between the best 4-star and the 5-star signature weapon typically would be ranging from 18-19% to 20+%, almost 30% sometimes. So that is a range where I'll consider it as a typical tier difference. When I say tier, it means between 5-star and 4-star weapon, or between 4-star and 3-star weapon. Okay? At C0, 16% is slightly better than most 4-star enemy weapons as well. Because I just mentioned, right, typical tier difference, 19 to 20+%. 16% is better than that. Although it's slightly better, but it is still better. So it's up to you to decide whether you're okay with that. Oh, but bear in mind, this is when you consider the full 30-second duration. What you see in-game, it will not look like that. It will look like your Widsith is doing better than Kagura's Verity. But again, remember, it's only for that 10 seconds, and you have 20 seconds where your Widsith is doing lesser damage than Kagura's. Much lesser damage than Kagura's. So for reference, Kokomi's Donut versus Prototype Amber, which is her next best 4-star option, is about 10 to 11% difference. And this was the reason why I did not pull for Kokomi's Everlasting Moonglow, because that's bad. Being 10 to 11% better than the next 4-star weapon is bad. So by that logic, you can also extend to say that 60% is also bad. But 16% is closer to the 19%, 19 to the 20 plus percentage for a tier difference. So it's kind of hard to say which is better. Well, okay, it's kind of hard to say whether the 16% should be considered as bad for the Kagura's Verity or still considered as good. But remember, it's rumored that Jade Cutter is the other 5-star weapon with Kagura's Verity on the banner, which will make the banner really good to pull on. And I'll think that it is good to pull for Kagura's Verity since we already established here. I hope that's clear to you guys, based on the math that I've done. Kagura's is really not that bad. Now let's go into the TLDR. There's a bit more expansion into this. Not to mention the 16 to 90%. I also need to give one more caveat regarding it. Okay, TLDR. I know it looks a bit long, but I'm trying to summarize what I've been talking about. So Widsith is overhyped because people aren't considering the 20-second stall time. They're looking at the buff uptime and they're like, oh my god, this is fantastic. But because her E does not snapshot, you have the issue with the 20-second downtime. If her E does snapshot, this will not be an issue. Widsith will become her BIS weapon. But because her Kagura's Verity pretty much requires that her E does not snapshot because it gains stats. So they have made it such that E does not snapshot in order for Kagura's Verity to be good. I don't know whether this should be considered a creating the problem and selling the solution. But just bear in mind that there will be more mechanics involved that will help non-snapshotting abilities. It will happen. So anyway, it doesn't mean that Widsith is bad, by the way. I'm not trashing on Widsith, I'm just saying that Widsith is overhyped. It's just not as good as the general sentiment is on it now. 16 to 90%, like I said earlier, typical tier difference borders on the typical tier difference at 19% or slightly better at 16%. Once you average out all the buffs, you include the 20-second downtime. Bear in mind that when Yae is out and Widsith showcases on YouTube, you'll see very high figures that shows it to be better than the 16 to 90%, very very close to Kagura's Verity or maybe even higher. But those are all during the 10-second uptime. Please consider the 20-second downtime that's unlikely to be shown in such showcases typically. Because when you do the showcase, more or less their characters or their team is doing enough damage that you don't need more than 10 seconds. At least my com is like this. So yeah, for realistic consideration, please consider the 20-second downtime. Okay, especially if you're in a F2-3 setup, in a team where you may not be able to clear all the content within 10 seconds. All the more this makes a difference, yeah? This is one thing I wanted to highlight. The 16 to 90% gap will actually become even bigger if you consider the fact that her burst will not always be buffed by Widsith due to the long 20-second downtime. I have not factored this in my math because my rotation, the current rotation that I've been sharing, it actually allows the second Q to be buffed by your second Widsith buff. Why? Because the first Q was cast near the end of the first Widsith buff. You get it? It was cast near the end of the first Widsith buff. Thus, once you have the rotation being done, By the time your Widsith buff ends, by the time you cast your third, sorry, by the time you cast your second Q, it will be buffed by the second Widsith buff. But when you go to the third Q, assuming that the content is hard enough that you need to go through 3 rotations of Yae Mikos, the third Q will not be buffed. Then it will repeat itself. So basically, it's first 2 Qs for every 3 Qs are buffed, third Q is unbuffed. First 2 Q buffed, third Q unbuffed, and then it repeats. If you follow my rotation. Okay? Oh, Raiden's team. Good stuff. So this basically makes Widsith even closer to a typical tier difference from Kagura's Verity, right? Because I just said that it will become bigger. And once this percentage becomes bigger, even by 3 to 4%, then Widsith completely falls into a category where it still is one tier behind Kagura's Verity. So yes, Kagura's Verity is better, it's worth pulling unlike Kokomi's Donut. But as an F2P option, for long-time F2P players who have gathered enough to get a R5 Widsith, it's still a very good weapon. It might even be the top of the 4-star weapons. Just don't expect it to be like Prototype Amber versus Kokomi's Donut, where it's only 10 to 11% difference. Remember, I have not factored this in, yeah? I have not factored in the third Q not being buffed. Because I want to do my math all the way to up to 3 rotations. Alright? So, whether Widsith is the best 4-star weapon, I'll have to do more math for the other weapons to be sure. But based on the figure so far, it is still a very strong contender for the best 4-star option. And as for C1 versus R1 and more Constellations, I'll cover those once the banner info is out to do a proper analysis and recommendation. So I'll give you guys the percentages when you go from C0 to C6 and then R1 and R5. Then we'll say, like, given your resources, whether it's better to go for Constellations or Kagura's Verity, etc, etc, etc. Okay, so those will come eventually, which is very soon, probably in the next few days or Monday, Tuesday. Because it's already Friday right now. Right? So I hope this video has been helpful to you guys. It is a very straightforward video where we have looked into Widsith, whether it's overhyped, artifact comparisons for it, as well as weapon comparison with Kagura's Verity. And I hope you understand this very important point before you come and hound me in future saying that my math is not accurate, because in the first place, whatever showcases you see is going to be during the 10-second uptime. Okay, they are not gonna, most people are not going to show you that 20-second downtime in those showcases. So you are going to see Widsith doing so well, but that's because people are showing you the best part of it and not the other 20 seconds. 10 seconds versus 20 seconds. 10 seconds uptime, 20 seconds downtime. And you repeat this so that it's true into people's mind. 10-second uptime, 20-second downtime. That is a huge amount of downtime. Not to mention it affects your rotation, etc. Like I said, you can't guarantee your Q gets buffed, your Q and your 3SE too as well, by the way. When I say Q, when I say burst or Q, it includes the 3SE that you cast immediately after. So it is a huge problem from that point onwards. So yep, thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you guys next video. I'll try to do up more weapons so I can do a full weapon comparison, like how I always do here, right? Instead of it being 4 Widsiths here, it should be different weapons. So yeah, this is what I've been trying to drive at. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you guys next video. Bye.